Welcome to Talk About Tulsa. Our goal is to try and answer the questions: why is Tulsa and the surrounding areas growing? What is the appeal for people to relocate here, and why should businesses consider investing in this area? Consider this like a drawn-out investigative report, but a bit more fun. So, let's talk about Tulsa. This podcast is brought to you by Simply Delish Catering, and pointing to it right here. I can't tell if that's the right way. Simply Delish Catering. If you are looking for a company to provide for your corporate event, your wedding, your party, your lunch, whatever the case may be, they do a fantastic job. Great food, Southern hospitality, simple to work with because it's Simply Delicious in the name. I'm telling you, you will not be sorry. Look them up. Simply Delicious, simply-lish.com, and look them up today. Check out their website. They got pictures of their food on there, and you can reach them and start your contact with them today. Simply Delish Catering. Welcome to Talk About Tulsa, and I'm your show host, Patrick Thompson. And today we're going to be talking to a local real estate agent regarding what is happening in Tulsa. Like I said, Talk About Tulsa is where I'm trying to figure out, why is Tulsa growing? What is happening? For my own benefit, I guess you could say. I don't know what I'm going to benefit from it. But so I'm going around doing my own research, trying to find out what's going on. So I figured we would talk with a local real estate. Today I have with me Tom Ostasic. Tom, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
And Tom has a very unique point of view from my perspective. We both worked at the same company a while ago, and he is now real estate. So we were in the tech industry, and then the shift from that to real estate locally, that's kind of a big deal. So I figured I'd ask Tom to come join me today and give me his perspective. Tom?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how long you've been in Tulsa.
Yeah, I've officially been in Tulsa longer than anywhere else I've lived. I've been here, I think, 19 years now.
Wow.
And so I'm officially an Okie at this point.
Where did you come from before then?
Born in Cleveland, raised in Chicago. High school, I moved to California, lived out there for a decade, went to college, moved to Arizona, and then from Arizona, I was dragged to Tulsa.
Now, did you go to college for technology?
I did not. I was there on a golf scholarship, and
Did you say the golf?
A
golf?
Yeah,
okay.
I played professional golf for 7 years, and I was basically going to school so I could play golf.
Whatever
Didn't know that about me, did you?
I didn't know that. Whatever works.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. It's interesting because people that I run into in the tech field, they always have some like background thing like would have never seen you in that. So I personally have a degree in respiratory therapy.
All right.
How does that apply? It doesn't.
No.
But nevertheless.
Yeah.
So when you got to Tulsa, what career were you in? I
was playing professional golf, and I was kind of living part-time here, part-time in Arizona, just trying to make it work. And I stopped playing in 2009. It was kind of on the heels of the real estate downturn and the economic downturn. With that, sponsorship money started to dry up, and I was becoming a dad. And so at that point, that was around the time I was, when I said move to Tulsa, because I was kind of going in between for a couple of years. So.
Which is interesting, and that just hits right on target with me doing this research, because I moved to Tulsa about 2008-ish. And so in my timeline of coming from where I came from, which was in the Austin area, to Tulsa, I remember going to the building we worked at, which is now City Hall in Tulsa, but it was at the time level 3. I would walk from where the building was to where I parked, because I wasn't going to pay for parking. Because as I was walking to the job, I'm like, look at all these empty spaces.
Right.
Why is it empty? And then at 5 o'clock, there was nobody downtown. So around about 2010-ish, right around there somewhere, that's when I started to notice, these parking spaces are supposed to start filling up. What would you say was the cause of them filling up? What was going on at that time?
So I didn't really notice that then. So in 2009, I didn't, you started working there around then. I didn't start working there until 2012, maybe 2013. My perception of downtown Tulsa when I first came here was kind of like a ghost town.
Yeah.
There just wasn't much going on.
Exactly.
Why would you go down there?
Right.
I wasn't in the corporate world, so I wasn't even seeing that benefit.
Right.
So for me, a big shift happened about 8 years ago. And then after the pandemic, it was like we all came out of hiding and like our downtown changed. Like, did you? That was my impression. I'm like, where did that building come from?
This?
Right.
This is a high-rise parking thing? What is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've seen a steady growth. For me, living in these bigger cities like Scottsdale and the San Francisco Bay Area and Chicago, this was a tiny town to me, Tulsa.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was kind of cringy of like how small it was. But since I've been here, I've watched it grow. And the arts, the music, the restaurants, just the things to do here, the gathering place.
Yeah.
There's been so much growth here in the last decade. It's a different city.
Okay, so I'm going to come from this from a couple of different angles. What did you see? What have you seen that is the same from those bigger cities that you see in Tulsa? Not necessarily arts, but like how things work as far as how they, it moves and.
So I think a big, and I don't remember the date it happened, but when we got the BOK Center, I feel like we were suddenly on the map because now like events came here and now it was like Tulsa got some credibility of being a decent city. That was my perception. As far as, I feel like we've gotten more traffic over the years, but still when I deal with a lot of people moving here and they're like, okay, tell me about the traffic and how long is my commute? And I'm like, this isn't Atlanta. This is not Chicago. Like you can get just about anywhere in Tulsa in 15, maybe 20 minutes,
That's
right?
That's right.
And yes, there's rush hour traffic, but you're going to laugh at it if you've come from a big city.
That's fantastic. Because I thought the same thing about traffic, number one, no traffic.
Right.
Because coming from Austin, I would commute from it was Kyle, just say San Marcos, about 30 minutes to 45 minutes drive time. And that was terrible.
Yeah.
And I get here, it's like, this isn't traffic.
Yeah.
Also, I got here when the BOK building was being built. And I remember going downtown and trying to turn a certain way. I was like, why is this street stopping? Where's why did they shut the road down? And years later, so the BOK Center. So that's interesting that I never thought about that. The BOK helped bring business to Tulsa.
Yeah.
So you played golf, stopped. What did you do after that point?
I moved away for a couple of years. I had married my ex-wife, and she was a physician. We went away for her fellowship, came back. I got into sales, selling telecommunications for a company that worked outside of Tulsa, and I was just working remote. And then we worked together at level 3 thereafter. So I had a sales background, even though, summer jobs and different things. So it was my dad was a sales manager, my mom was a sales manager, and my stepdad basically ran his own business as sales. So it was through and through. I was a salesman. So it was easy for me to go there.
Yeah. So it was telecommunications, and then level 3. So from that, what made you decide to go into real estate?
Yeah, so for a number of years, I kind of moved up the ranks. I went and worked for another technology telecommunications company, and from there I sold AI software, and from there I was basically chasing money. It was the next best opportunity that was going to pay me more. And then I got to a place where I realized I was unhappy. I just didn't like what I was doing, and I was watching other people actually liking what they did, like in my industry. And I'm like, I'm not reading about this stuff when I'm not on the clock.
Yeah,
so
that's true. Yeah.
But what I learned in that time is I started falling in love with real estate investing. And I was spending all of my free time reading, watching, listening, all things real estate. And so pandemic hit and my job became less secure. In fact, I ended up getting let go after the pandemic. And talking to my wife, I was like, are you okay if I just make a complete career change and just do something I'm passionate about? And she's like, I don't care what you do as long as you're happy. And I'm like, even if I'm making less money? And she's like, we can move if we need to.
That's fantastic.
And she gave me
kudos to the supportive wives.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I've got a great one.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, I had a couple of friends who I respect, who have 3 different friends, 3 different industries, all do very well for themselves. And they're like, Tom, you'd be great at real estate. You really should pursue it. And so with that, I was like, all right, here's a risk. I'm going to completely change careers at 42 years old or 41 years old. And what was great was that passion I had for it. I really was able to connect with real estate investors. And at that time, 2021, that was the thing. Like, that was a great time to invest in real estate.
Okay.
So I got into real estate and it took off pretty quickly for me.
So that's interesting. When you say real estate investors, are you talking about more of commercial or people just wanting to buy rental property?
I'm talking about like mom and pop, like, hey, I think this is going to help my future. Let's buy single family homes. That was the core business that I had. Now, people looking for duplexes and triplexes and things like that, but it was all residential.
Okay. And so this is great because that means that you had your finger on the pulse of what's going on in Tulsa. So what would you say was the driving force for people deciding to invest in Tulsa or Northeast Oklahoma?
Yeah, this is like my elevator pitch. I would have a lot of investors from out of state reach out to me because they'd find me on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram. And ultimately, they would say, why Tulsa? Awesome. Well, Tulsa is 30% below the national average as far as cost of living and housing. You have an educated population. We've got University of Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, University of Tulsa, Oral Roberts. We've got all these universities. So we've got educated population and cheap place to live.
Right.
So you have essentially a cheap labor force. And so people would say, hey, well, what's the main industries here? What are the headquarters here? And I said, you know what? We don't have major headquarters here, but we're a great location for businesses to have satellite offices because we have educated, cheap labor, essentially.
Right. That's good.
So there's that going on. Plus, Tulsa's investing all this money into the Tulsa Remote Program. I don't know, have you heard of that?
Yes, absolutely.
So we've got, educated, employed people moving to the area. We're incentivizing businesses to move here. So we're seeing more startups. So we're seeing population growth. I won't get political here, but we're a state that had a different opinion than the coasts that people were trying to escape from, especially around the pandemic. So we were seeing an influx of population. So we had all things showing Tulsa was on the rise.
Right.
Not to mention, we were talking about earlier about just the growth downtown and all those things. So, I was watching an investment in Tulsa by the city of Tulsa, outsiders investing in Tulsa. And so, I was helping these investors and also I was investing in Tulsa. I'm like, I'm putting my money here because I'm watching things grow. And stop me if you want me, cut me off.
Keep going. You're doing great.
So, I think this is important. And I was getting this frequently from these out-of-state investors. They say Tulsa reminds them a lot of Denver and Austin 20 years ago. Understated cities that were smaller than kind of the bigger cities, but on the rise. Now, not saying Tulsa is going to be as big as those two cities, but if you watch over the last 20 years, they've grown significantly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that going on in Tulsa, and that's kind of what I'm banking on and what feedback I'm getting from those who are observing Tulsa.
That's interesting because I used to live close to Austin, and then the companies I've worked for, I would go to Denver frequently. And so seeing Denver is like, well, it's cold there in wintertime, but tech. And so that's a great comparison because coming here, being around here, I'm like, okay, it's strangely tech. And I used to think that it was because of, the power, gas and oil, they put it on the map. And then plus oil lines need communications, telecom. Then, like you said, the bust. Okay, so why are people still coming here? So it's interesting that you make that comparison to those cities as to why Tulsa is on the grow. It blows my mind. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Tulsa was known as an oil town, but most of those headquarters have gone to Houston. And so Tulsa's had to diversify, and they have. And the city has done a good job of incentivizing businesses to end up in Tulsa, whether it's tax breaks or whatever it is. And I've worked in tech, and we used to jokingly talk about Tulsa being Silicon Prairie. It's not Silicon Valley, it's the Silicon Prairie.
I love that. Yeah. Silicon Prairie.
Feel free to use it. Let's spread it.
Done. Silicon Prairie. I'm taking that. Because have you noticed a lot of influx of people who are dealing with AI?
Oh yeah. And geez, how long ago? About 6 years ago, I was selling AI. Now it's gone a lot better since then, and we've been throwing around AI for a while. In fact, back in the day, telecom, just calling someone and it pick up and not be a person was considered AI back in the day.
Right. I get you.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Your original question was AI. It's in everything.
So, what would you say to a person that was thinking about moving to Tulsa? Let's just say it's a family of 4.
Yeah.
They've got kids 5, 10, and these in some sort of a tech company coming from the West Coast.
Well, I'm a good person to ask, given that I came from the West Coast.
Yeah.
I used to think of Oklahoma as a flyover state.
Yes.
Like most, major cities think of Oklahoma. And you move to Oklahoma and you realize it's just like any other kind of Midwestern town, right? If I were, and I'm somebody who used to think, God, that poor guy's stuck in Oklahoma. But the reality is I'd rather be here than California these days. I've got 3 kids. It's a great place to raise kids. If you look at what your money can afford when buying a home, it's no comparison from here and California.
Tom, I tell people all the time, I have stolen 3 houses here in Tulsa. I've stolen them, bought and sold.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I built a house back in 2013, and I remember sharing it with friends in California, and they're like, "This would be a $2 million house in California, and you paid what?" That doesn't add up.
Right.
So it's the thing that I've seen about Tulsa with the growth of the kind of culture and the scene here is, when I first moved here, it felt like I kind of went back in time, right?
Same thing, same.
Right?
I didn't want to stay.
No, I didn't like it. Yeah. In fact, I got married, had a child, went through divorce, and thought, oh my God, I'm stuck here, right? And then I was like, well, I might as well make the most of it. I'm here for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
And ironically, my ex-wife wanted to see if I collectively wanted to move for my daughter, and I was like, no, I want to be in Tulsa now. I don't want to go back to where I wished I was. Right. I want to be here now.
That's cool.
And so I think Tulsa is a great place to live, and I there's no other place I'd rather live right now.
That's cool, because we have really a similar background, except mine was swung to Texas. I was born in Chicago, as a matter of fact.
Oh.
So, but the saying, all my exes live in Texas, they do. But I was looking to sell a house that I had over 91st and Memorial.
Okay.
Brand new house in an old neighborhood, because the house before that burned down.
Okay.
And they built a brand new house. It was fantastic. So at that time, I was going through divorce, and I thought about selling. Before that, I was thinking about selling and moving with my wife and daughter that were down there. My daughter was down there for school. My wife moved down at the time. My wife at the time wanted to move back to Texas because we lived there for 15 years. My uncle, Sam, Army, dropped me off there. And so that's why I met her. And she wanted to move back. Okay, fine. So I didn't have a problem with it. I thought, hey, I like Texas. And I'd move back, thought I would move back. But then once we, the road kind of got really bumpy and we went through a divorce, I'm like, no, I'm going to stay here. And stole another house, sold that one and stole another one. Like, golly, you kid, like the housing market here is, man, I remember when I was in Austin, when I was in Texas, going into 20 years ago, I had a house in Kyle, Texas, 23-ish hundred. That was my first built up house, built from the ground up, 23-ish hundred square feet. And it was $130,000. I drove 30 minutes north, found basically the same house in Austin, Texas for $400,000. So that was my baseline of living in the suburbs of an area, a house that small for $400,000. And I came here, I'm like, oh no, this is incredible. This is a field of dreams.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, another point about Tulsa real estate, I bought my first home in 2008 with my ex and bought it for $155,000 midtown, and we paid the list price, and this is 2008 when things were crashing, and I remember having to explain to my parents why we didn't lowball them. I'm like, you don't understand. Like, Tulsa is not going through did you hear what I spent? $150,000, we were insulated from those bubbles. And I think we still are in a sense, because, as you hear all these things on the news about the real estate market, but that's kind of the coast and, the big fluctuations. With that being said, we have seen tremendous growth in the appreciation for the home. So we are our homes are getting more expensive, but as they relate to the rest of the country, they're still very affordable.
That's fantastic. Man, Tom, this has been excellent. You literally said you've lined out why people are coming to Tulsa and that BOK thing. I didn't even think about that. So that's great. This is the part where you get to talk right into that camera right over there. I don't think it'd see me. And tell any and everything you want to about what you do, your business. Shameless, but not shameless plug.
Sure.
Right in that camera.
I appreciate it. Yeah. My business is helping people navigate the most expensive purchase or sale in their life. And so it's a tremendous honor, and it's something that I do full time. It's just what I love to do. And so I'm helping folks, whether they're from out of state, come into state, or just relocate across town, downsize, what have you. Really, my goal is to make this potentially stressful situation as smooth and seamless as possible with me and my team. And so, if you can find me on social media, if you search Tulsa Tom, my last name can be a mouthful and even more difficult for some to spell if they haven't seen it before. But I'm on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, basically providing information about Tulsa in general. Yes, real estate, but also what it's like living here and current events and all the things that someone would be interested to know if they were considering a move in Tulsa.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Tom, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for thinking of me.
Not a problem. I appreciate you coming on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as I always end this show with talk about Tulsa, stay curious.